prodigal curse. Lucas Anders never thought he'd return to Briar Hollow. The town looked the same, peeling paint, broken fences, and streets that whispered secrets when the wind blew. But beneath the cracked sidewalks lay decades of buried grief and something darker, something waiting for him. Years ago, Lucas had fled after the accident. No one spoke about it openly, but the shadows of his family's tragedy stretched down every street. His parents, gone in a house fire that the police ruled an accident, though everyone knew better. Lucas had always felt their deaths were tied to the Hollow's long-held curse. They called it the Mourner, a restless spirit born from betrayal and blood. Legend said a woman was wronged by the townsfolk decades ago, her cries echoing through the woods that encircled the Hollow. They say she waits, seeking to drag the guilty into her grief-soaked world. When Lucas walked into the Hollow's only bar that first night back, he felt the stares. He saw the pity, the blame. And when he locked eyes with Emma, the girl he'd left behind, he knew she carried her own ghosts. Emma's brother had vanished 10 years ago, another name whispered in connection with the Mourner. Days after his return, the disappearances began. First, a farmer's son, gone from his bed, the sheets soaked in brackish water. Then, an old teacher, found wandering the woods, her eyes wide and empty, lips murmuring an apology to someone unseen. Lucas felt the Hollow pulling him under, the past dragging claws across his sanity. He met with Emma and a few old friends in his father's decaying study, yellowed newspaper clippings scattered like dead leaves across the desk. Each clipping told the same story: betrayal, death, and a town that looked away. They traced the curse to Lucas's great-grandfather, a man who led the mob that condemned the Mourner to her watery grave in the marshes. The spirit's rage wasn't blind, it was a vendetta, one Lucas had unknowingly inherited. The group's nights bled into days as they pieced together the puzzle. Emma's touch anchored him as he drifted between dread and determination. The deeper they dug, the more the town seemed to fight back. Doors slammed on their own. Shadows moved without light. And always, the smell of stagnant water followed them. Finally, they found it. A ritual, hidden in an old church ledger. An offering of truth and blood might appease the mourner's hunger. But the ritual demanded a confession, a secret kept buried for generations. On the final night, they gathered at the marsh's edge, the air heavy with fog and distant sobbing. Lucas held Emma's hand as he spoke the words, each confession tearing a piece from him. The truth about his parents' deaths, the guilt he'd carried like a second skin. But before the last word left his lips, a laugh cut through the darkness. From the reeds stepped someone Lucas trusted more than anyone, his childhood friend, Mark. The betrayer within the circle. Mark had struck a deal with the spirit years ago, offering up the townsfolk one by one to keep his own secrets hidden. He'd grown strong off the fear, the death, the lies. The marsh boiled, water churning as the mourner's wail rose to a deafening crescendo. Lucas lunged at Mark, but the ground gave way beneath his feet. He stumbled back, finding himself at the cliff's edge that overlooked the endless black of the marsh. Behind him, the spirit's form flickered, pale, grief-stricken, eyes locked on his soul. In front of him, Mark snarled, pleading with Lucas to keep the secret alive. Emma screamed his name, but her voice felt miles away. Lucas stood at the cliff's edge, the rotting marsh yawning wide below him. Behind him, the mourner's form wavered in the mist, a woman in tattered white, eyes bottomless wells of grief. Mark's shouts faded into the storm rolling over Briar Hollow. Emma's voice cracked through the roar of the wind. "Lucas, don't do this!" He turned to her, rain mixing with tears. "It's the only way. It's always been me." Lucas stepped forward, feet at the crumbling edge. He felt the mourner's cold hand brush his shoulder, an invitation, not a pull. He could almost see her face clearly now, young once, before betrayal twisted her soul. He thought of his parents, of Emma's brother, of the families who deserved peace. He whispered a final confession to the mourner, an apology for sins he didn't commit but carried anyway. Then, with a breath that felt like freedom, Lucas let himself fall. The swamp swallowed him whole, water closing over his head, black and cold. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the marsh glowed. Pale, ghostly light spread from where Lucas vanished. rippling through the reeds like dawn breaking after endless night. Above, the mourner's wail rose once more, but now it was softer, almost a lullaby. Her form drifted upward, dissolving into thousands of tiny, luminescent moths. They danced into the sky, scattering like stars returning to the heavens. The ground beneath Emma's feet stilled. Mark dropped to his knees, babbling, undone by the truth and the spirit's release. The town itself seemed to exhale. The oppressive fog lifted. Doors swung open. Windows rattled free of years of grime. Somewhere in the distance, a baby cried, the first sound of life unburdened by the curse. Emma looked out over the cliff's edge, watching the last lights fade over the marsh. She pressed her hand to the earth, feeling warmth where there had always been rot. Flowers bloomed at her feet, white lilies, pale and luminous in the moonlight, growing from the soil like a promise. Lucas was gone. But his sacrifice had broken the curse. Briar Hollow would heal, even if the memory of its sins remained carved into its bones. And as the breeze carried the mourner's final sigh through the trees, Emma swore she heard Lucas's voice, calm, free, and echoing in the rustling leaves. No more secrets, no more fear. Live, love, and be happy.